Warehouse and operations as a career, I'm Marty, and we all here at WAOC appreciate you stopping in with us again. If you haven't subscribed just yet, or maybe left a kind review of the show, we'd appreciate that as well. And I'm sure your friends would love to know where you're getting all those thoughts and opinions from. Feel free to send them over our way. I'd like to start off today talking about waste. The subject of waste came up twice this week. Once from a young supervisor that had just gotten out of a budget meeting with his CFO, who had used, the word waste on several different occasions, while glaring at him, as he put it. Then the next day, I had an order selector and one of his buddies who operated a reach lift approach me, asking about the word waste. They had heard the term applied to their productivity measurements and wanted to know what that meant. So waste is a good place to start today, maybe. Waste is an overused term in the distribution industry, or I feel that it is. I'll share a few situations where I've had the word waste thrown out to me and where I've tossed it on to others. As an outbound lead or supervisor, we may be in charge of or responsible for all the shrink wrap, nylon strapping tape, and label rolls, right? How many times have you seen, and order selectors are notorious for all three of these, an 80% used roll of shrink wrap tossed over to the side because an order selector, of course, did not want to run out while wrapping a pallet? So he or she tosses it aside and runs off with a new roll. And nylon tape. On one shift, I have seen literally 100 partially used rolls laying around everywhere. They're small, lightweight, and an item we always have to have with us. And have you ever been walking your dock and see those pallets where a board selector or loader has used like 3 rolls of tape instead of reaching for shrink wrap? And I'll deny ever saying this, and I hope the statute of limitations has expired, but I was once a party to shrink wrapping and taping an inventory control guide to a bollard post. If your facility uses the belt label printers, you know all about those small thermal labels. They come on a cardboard roll. The ones I used to buy were 500 to a roll. Our average batch or pull was about 180 to 200 cases. My selectors hated to run out of labels during a pull, having to stop in an aisle and reload their machine and then reset it to where they were in their batch. It was a hassle. We'd find many 80% rolls scattered everywhere. I understood it, but the cost of and expense to our departments for these 3 items is immense. And how about pallets? A wooden GMA oak pallet can run anywhere from $8 to $18 a piece depending on its grade and age. As a supervisor, how many times have you cringed or lost it when you hear that cracking sound of a pallet jack load riser wheel making, as it separates the slats and runners on a pallet? If the operator keeps going and doesn't stop, you know you've just spent that cost. I had an employee tell me one time, "It's okay, you can send it out for repair." I informed him we paid for the repaired pallet when we bought it back. Ever had your power go down during a selection shift? One of our rules was that during a power outage, everyone had to grab a broom or a rag and start sweeping or dusting the racking. It was considered a waste of labor if we weren't doing something. Mind you, it was too dark to select. However, we could sweep and dust. Actually, the no selecting rule was a good one. It was literally too dark to safely be operating equipment. But still, we had to stay busy. As a supervisor, we're probably responsible for the man hours we use each shift. Now, although this number is relatively easy to determine, all we need to know is the case count divided by our hourly selection rate or average, and we'll know how many man hours we'll need that night or that day, right? However, what about all those variables? People calling in sick, calling in with transportation issues, or just not coming in? Yep, still our responsibility. And if you are overstaffed, you guessed it, your boss is going to say you're creating a waste with labor. And now for us as employees or order selectors, waste can take on a whole other meaning. It can affect our income, our positions even, and promotions on down the road. We do not want to be that employee that is always tossing those almost empty rolls of shrink wrap to the side, or the one overwrapping our pallets and wasting the shrink wrap. I've actually seen selectors doing this, just to take them a few more minutes so they could pick up another batch, a more prosperous batch that they knew was going to come up. And all those partial nylon tape rolls. One night I had the inventory control guys gather up all the rolls, that they ran across throughout the shift and place them in a box. I locked up all the unopened or new cases. We had to use up all the partial rolls before we could get into the new ones. Now I'm sure some of them were just thrown away, but we worked 2 full shifts without using any new rolls. That saved about 1.5 cases, and the crew did a much better job with them for quite a while after that. And labels. Those labels cost a lot of money. I stayed on the carpet about labels all the time. It got so bad at one point that a selector had to turn in an empty cardboard roll to me before I would give him another one. Again, after a little while, people got much more responsible with them. Let's see, I kind of got off the employees roll, didn't I? Well, I guess not really. Anyway, so as an order selector, we may be working by the case or an incentive program or some type of an activity-based compensation plan. With these pay platforms, we do not want to produce any wasted movements at all. Excess drive time is a waste. Taking that extra restroom break becomes a waste. Leaving to lunch a minute early or returning a minute late is a waste to us. Waste to an order selector is lost money. A successful order selector learns that early on in our careers. But what about planning out retrieving our pallets for the next batch? Or pre-planning where we'll stage our pallets once we get them back up on the front docks? Maybe having a system for downloading or picking up our next batch. All these movements are just as important as our drive times are, and, they're wasted motions if we don't plan for them. Using all the logic we just learned about companies' waste and our waste, did we pick up on the fact that waste is an expense? It is money. And I don't know about you, but I'm just not big on losing money. With all that said, think of all the other ways we create waste in our industry. Damages, short on trucks, misships, salvage, returns, and we've mentioned breaking pallets, but what about all the pallets we shipped off instead of restacking when loading them out? Or maybe leaving the wrong count on the trailer. Oh, and speaking of leaving things on trailers, on the inbound side, and we haven't even talked about, wrong case counts being received and wrong items being received. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. So yes, the word waste is used a lot, but is it overused? Maybe not. As professionals, I hope we do understand and take responsibility for that word. It is our responsibility as an employee. I mentioned last week, that was what week was that? Week 34. So we're in week 35 this week. So we're closing in on the end of the third quarter. How are we coming along with our planning and goals? Many of us had a rough second, maybe even a third quarter this year, but it'll be okay. Things are moving right along. I'm thinking the fourth quarter, that distribution, manufacturing, and production, that regular rush is going to be a bit different this year, but then it'll all start over, much stronger at the end of the fourth. I myself feel now is the time to make those final adjustments to our goals for 2020. What we can't or didn't achieve on time this year, kick it on down the road. That's fine. It's called adjusting. I'm doing quite a bit of adjusting myself. I had a long-time listener reach out and ask why I hadn't done an episode about how to journal, plan, and create goals. He'd taken one of my other classes online and thought it'd be a great episode for our listeners. I'd certainly be happy to put just such together. If you'd like to see something like that, especially if you're a new supervisor or lead, or maybe an order selector, lift operator, sanitation, or transportation associate, shoot, any type of warehouse employee, let me know. We'll put something together, or even another type of topic. Send an email to host@warehouseandoperationsasacareer.com. I just love talking ops. Doesn't matter to me. Your topics are mine. Until next week, watch waste, especially our waste. That's our money. And always be safe, as not being safe is the biggest waste we'll encounter.